Thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure being here together with the famous John Martinez from Shocklogic. Yeah, that definitely deserves an applause. Today we're going to talk about creating meaningful connections. It's kind of a follow-up of the previous sessions that we did, where first we defined what are meaningful connections. We quickly scoped into meaningful connections being more than just an interaction, preferably having an ROI, some sort of business meaning to it, but also a feeling, an intention, long-term vision, rather than just a one-off interaction. And then we spoke about in person, creating that meaningful connection in person. How can we do that? Where can we improve? And today we're going to dive a bit deeper into creating meaningful connections from behind a screen. Well, who better to pitch in on that than our dear John, owner of Shocklogic, who are actually also helping event organizers to create those meaningful connections online. So John,
thank you very much, Merijn.
Would love to hear from you. How do you feel about, is it even possible to create meaningful connections online?
Yeah, I think this more is beyond if it is possible or not. I think it's a must. It's unavoidable in this world right now. And I believe that we are all, well, I want everyone in my team to strive to be a leader. And I think that myself, what I aspire to is to be able to lead from compassion. That's my aspiration. And when we step into that space, there's a vulnerability that you need to deal with. And I think that happens in that, in that square on our screens. And I think it's unavoidable that now we're communicating in this environment. And with our team, we make a lot of, we coach the members of the team very intensively for how we're going to look on the screen, and those kind of things. Because when we're having conversations, right, we want to do this, right? We want to connect, we want to look into the eyes. But now we're looking at a camera, and the amount of times, right? So raise your hand if you recognize this. Is yes, I think you're totally correct. I do know what you're talking about, And so we tend to look at where the image is, and we do two things. We switch between ourselves and the interlocutor, and we do that sort of jumping between one thing and the other. So what I do in Zoom is that I click on gallery in Zoom. You click on gallery, you get everybody in a strip. You take the corner, you pull it aside, and you put the person in the middle under the screen. So the person you communicated with, you put it underneath the camera. So you're looking at the person, but the person is looking at you. So it looks like you're looking into their eyes. So as you can see, we've thought a lot about this, because the thing that I don't want is to say, yes, of course, Tamsin, yes. Yeah, I think you're totally right. And we're trying to create a meaningful connection from this space that is unavoidable. It is here to stay. So I hate Zoom. It's like I hate the internet, right? I hate cars, So all we can do is find out how can we be better, how can we connect better in this new environment, because it's actually new for most of us, and it's new to the one on the other side. And so if we are, so for example, one of the things that we do is that we're very keen on what appears on the screen. So I don't know if you realize that anyone from the Shocklogic team will have a lower third, and we all, same font. We're very strict on how we put our name on the screen, right? And this sounds geeky, but first name, family name, space, Shocklogic, right? And that's it. Because, well, my belief is that the only way that a company like ours, and we're all small companies, can scale, the only way that we can grow is by having clear processes. So I believe that when it comes to processes and these things, there's two sides of our brain. It's the left side and the right side. And we have a value that we call discipline give us freedom. And discipline give us freedom means that it's my complete belief that I don't raise myself to the level of my challenges. I fall to the level of my systems. All right? So my processes should catch me. My habits should catch me. That day that I don't want to go to the gym, if I have it in place, how to still do my eating if it is not a habit, right? If I don't trust myself, and I was a meeting planner, and as a meeting planner, I trust nothing, okay? You have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. So in that sense, Adam, we're not very dissimilar because the only thing that can happen, Murphy was an optimist, okay? So with that in mind, we go into it with the energy of, I'm going to solve it. Whatever it comes, I'm going to solve it. So creating meaningful connections also requires vulnerability. It requires you being in a place of listening intently, caring about the other, being kinder than necessary, because everyone that we come across is fighting its own battle. So what is going on with this person? So I'm getting impatient, and she keeps on looking back, and I'm talking to her and she's looking back, and then I'm getting irritated, but actually her son hasn't come home in 2 years, and he just came, and she still is in the call with me, So I don't know what the hell's going on. So I'm going to go into it from a place of kindness and compassion, and I choose to live my life like that. And for some people, I get eye rolling from middle-aged white men that lead companies. I get eye rolling for this, but I choose to live my life like this. And so in that sort of connection, so that's one of the little tricks. I take gallery, put it small, and I put myself and the person. And whoever is talking, I drag it to the middle. In Zoom, you can take unless you're sharing screen. If you're sharing screen, you can't. But if you are not sharing screen, you can take anybody and move it. You can move people around in their boxes. I'm not so good at Teams. I don't like it that much. And all the other platforms, I always wish I was in Zoom. And something that we do is that we record every single call, and we tell the person, in order to then put the video through an AI, and that creates a minute, creates a transcript. From the transcript, you just choose stuff, what is meaningful, and then you create bullet points, and then it's really easy to have a minute of what happened. This was impossible in the past, right? You had to sit there and really write and write and write, and now you can do this kind of stuff. So how do we use AI in order to simplify our lives, in order to make us do better? Because I think that if all the things are covered, we're more free. At Shocklogic, we call it over-prepare and then go with the flow, right? So you make sure that all these things are in place. You make sure that you share with the people that you live with, that you have this session or this conversation, so nobody's Netflixing at the time that you are having this important presentation or connection. Also tell people, oh, by the way, between 11 and 11:30, I'm going to have this interview, conversation, call, presentation, etc., etc. So somebody doesn't come into the room, like the toddler from the BBC thing, comes dancing into the room, And I tend to say, never have a door in your back because you don't control it. Light should be to the front. Before in Zoom, you can turn the camera on and look at yourself and check the space before you turn the camera on. Because then when all of that is, if you over prepare, then you can be yourself. Then you can connect, then you can be charming, you can be thinking about the other because you're not so busy about what's going on here, you know? And fear is a terrible companion. Fear, neurologically, is designed to make us stupid. It makes us good for 90 seconds. After that, it makes us stupid, you know? Because we get an amygdala hijack, something doesn't work, and you panic, and you don't know what to press, and then that kind of things happen. So that's another thing. I really believe on, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. Simon Sinek, S-I-N-E-K, and the book's called Start With Why. And what he says is that most of us operate from the what, how, why, right? So when somebody says, what do you do? So you tend to say, well, I work for a events app company, la 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 la. And it's really hard to switch this, right? But if you hear me introducing myself, I tend to introduce myself as I'm John Martinez. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Shocklogic, and I'm passionate about the development of human potential. So I love to run teams. I happen to be the CEO of this event tech company, so I tend to introduce myself from a place of vulnerability. And that is freaking scary, okay? That is really uncomfortable. And but if as you practice it, as you do it more and more, this become more and more second nature. And if you want to create meaningful connections, then you need to be, there's another one to follow, and she's called Brené Brown, right? Have you heard Brené Brown? Okay, look for it. Brené Brown. Brené Brown she's written a number of books, and she talks about vulnerability. She wrote a book called The Power of Imperfection. Is one of them, and so what she says is that we really connect. The only time that we really connect is when we make ourselves vulnerable to the other, and the other one doesn't happen to you. You don't have those friends that you tell them a lot and they tell you nothing, and there's a point that you feel like I'm not feeling very comfortable. I'm opening myself up, but the other side doesn't open back. So when we open ourselves up, the other side engages. So when I say, hi, my name is John Martinez and I'm passionate about the development of human potential. I absolutely adore my team. I happen to be the CEO of an event tech company. And then I just gave something of me. Yes, I took a risk. But the only way that we can collect anything, the only way that we're going to beat anything is taking risks, right? So you have to show up first, and then the other side will show up. Of course, I don't believe in oversharing. There's a lot of other stuff that goes on, but I go there with an open heart and open mind. And I believe that as I'm trying to create this whole conversation about meaningful connections, and that how I am is so important to to that connection. I meditate, so I would do a 3-minute breathing exercise. Listen, we have something called an amygdala in our brain, right? It's a gland in our limbic brain, our oldest brain. Our limbic brain is responsible for all decisions because it can only do 3 things: fight, flight, freeze, right? We have the same brain. There are no better brains, worse brains. We have the same model, right? And it's not a 90s model or a 1960s model or whatever. It's the same model of brain, right? So how we understand it and how we manage it is going to depend on how we deal with it. And if you imagine an iceberg, right? So what's above the iceberg, what everybody sees are your actions, right? And those actions have results. That's what everybody sees. Nobody knows what's going on underneath the water, right? Nobody knows what's going on with you. And what's happening is that your physiology is triggering emotions, energy in motion. So your heart rate goes up. It triggers an emotion. It's an energy in your body. You give context to that energy. You turn it into a feeling. You turn that feeling. Do we have another set for Terry? No. Okay. That feeling gets context and turns into a thought. And that thought provides an action. And that action is what everybody sees. The whole stuff at the bottom, nobody sees. This is going on inside of us. And so I had a friend, he was always in a freaking bad mood. Every time I went to talk to him, he was hypoglycemic, you know? So he had a low sugar problem, which put him in a bad mood. And I couldn't understand this bloody, mood going. So our physiology is affecting how we behave. And if you want to lower your heart rate, the best way to lower your heart rate is 5 deep breaths. That's it. 5 is all it takes. Adam was saying to me that breathing makes him anxious. I was thinking, okay, maybe that's something to explore. Maybe there's something interesting there to look at. Because in this whole thing, the way that we have broken, we're talking about meaningful connections online, right? So that's the conversation. We broke it into 2. We said the environment and ourselves. The environment is where the light is coming from, the camera. So the environment you can break into the room, the space, and the tech and furniture. The tech, you make sure that you have good bandwidth, you negotiate with the people that you live with, and you make sure that you have the right bandwidth for the presentation, et cetera, et cetera. You do. I told a speaker of ours, run a cable from the router to your computer so you have a strong connection when you're going to do your presentation. This method of communication is here to stay. It's not going away, okay? So all the frustrations and all the, I don't understand the tech, I don't like the tech, it's not going anywhere. So all we can do is really embrace it. So the chair, that you're in a good chair, that you're in a good place, that the camera is at, it's at this level, you're not looking like that, you're not looking like that. And then that little trick, to put the image underneath the camera. And when you have the camera here and the big screen here, then I suggest you take your presentation and you put it here. Don't put it in your second screen, because you're going to be talking to people like this, right? So I'm talking to you, and I'm actually, yes, and then and that's, it doesn't create the connection. Okay, that's the environment, and then us. Us is where are we? What's going on with us? Am I in a rush? Am I comfortable? Did I do my homework? Did I prepare before this? Am I anxious? When I am anxious, I tend to talk faster, like now. I'm nervous, right? And in a moment, I will catch myself, have a breath, and immediately I feel my heart rate going down, the adrenaline. I even feel tingling because the adrenaline is leaving a little bit because my fingertips tend to tingle. And then, have you been in a conversation and somebody's really irritating you and you feel, oh my God. It's like, sometimes I feel I'm in a conveyor belt towards a precipice and I can only walk backwards, right? Because I'm getting really irritated by the situation. And I would say, would you give me a second? There's somebody at the door. So I would turn the camera off, turn the microphone, breathe 5 times, regain my strength. Because you see, I'm a believer that when we lash out, we're not in a place of power. What I call power is when I'm strong, when I'm solid. So when I'm solid, when I'm strong, I'm compassionate, I'm generous, I'm loving, I'm kind. When I'm scared, when I'm out of my power, then I live by scarcity rather than abundance. And then I don't communicate in the right way. I don't say the things that I wanted to say, and then I get I don't know how you call it, but I call it emotional hangover. Right? You put it down, you think, damn, why did I say that? You know, and what happens is that our amygdala secretes a gland, a neuroreceptor into our frontal lobe, right? So it is designed to make us stupid, okay? It is designed to stop us from thinking because we need to act, because fear is survival, and survival is us being able. But now there are no bears running around or lions or stuff. Now is this guy so scary, you know? and then my boss, I didn't do my job. My boss is gonna, what he's gonna think about me, and this guy that I fancy, and I'm trying to have a relationship with, maybe he will judge me. Maybe he will judge me in the wrong way, and all of this that's the fear that we're feeling, and we tend to react from there. And while this is happening, we are in a worse condition to react because our amygdala is making our frontal lobe stupid.
Absolutely agree, and I love how many of the things you mentioned are kind of also what we know to be a driver for meaningful connections in person, and they still apply in a virtual space. I would love to also open up the conversation to the other people joining, because one of the reasons why we're here is that we can also get your input. Would love to hear from you. Maybe we can get a small show of hands. Who feels like they really gotten a meaningful connection online in the past few years? Show of hands. All right, I think that's about 99% of the people here. Love it. Anyone who would like to share what made that connection a meaningful connection for you, and what accumulated that to become a meaningful connection, and why you still call it a meaningful connection? I'm just going to give the microphone to anyone if no one offers it.
I think listening to John, it's really interesting to feel the human qualities coming into a communication which is about business. It's all about business, but here I felt like I was listening to some kind of coach. The best speakers nowadays, we know them. They are those, American gurus, the like of, Tim Robinson, the guy who could engage in one go the whole of Excel, And I think businesses, CEOs, speakers need more of those values, the way you conveyed just now, and that's an example. There is technology on one hand, and there is really the human heart and soul on the other side.
Love that is still shines through when you, even if you're behind the screen, it can still shine through in that regard. Anyone else who would like to share their experience of a meaningful connection behind the screen? Maybe John, maybe you can name an example of what really was.
Yeah, I think that the advantage that we have now, it's not only sound, right? Before we used to just be like this, right? Now we can do that, right? And so all our micro expressions can come through. So when you say, "Oh, and my eyebrows just went up there," right? It's different to, "Oh, the sound is the same, but then my micro expressions would, convey a message." So it is how we do that. I think it's really important that we because it's so new. This new space is so new. It's so we're just finding out. We're just realizing it, and although it feels like a lifetime with the pandemic. And one of the things that I tend to say to the speakers when we're training speakers is, this is not the same as your call with your grandson, okay? So this is, I know that you think that you know how to use the tech, but you need to make sure that you're comfortable in the space. And I happen to live away from my home country. So all of many of my loves are away from me. So that connection is really important. That connection, thank you. That connection is really important. So don't go away. I'm gonna. Okay. And Adam was gonna say something.
I am? Oh yeah. Moving on to the online side, what I found was exactly what happened as we were standing here talking. So a meaningful connection is primed by the activities we have available to us online. And that was Ricky Stanton from the Power of Events. Not met in person before. I'd seen him once, but I hadn't spoken to him. So I saw him, recognised what he did. Someone said I should speak to him. So we had an online call. And by recognising him, and you get a little bit of a relationship from the on-screen. Maybe not all the senses are firing, but it allowed me to just see him quickly and go, that's us, right? Okay, we know each other. Ricky, remind the name. So that online facilitation, I don't know if it can do everything that we want it to do. For me, it doesn't. But it certainly primes and allows us to start filtering information. So just like having a bunch of business cards that you decide to either bin or put in a rubber band or get rid of, online I'm kind of building a business card set of people I'd like to meet. I might meet 50 people in a month online, but actually I know by then I only want to meet 5 of them. There's only 5 people I'm going to try and then build on top of in an in-person event. Sure, there'll be other people I bump into and I might sort of think, nice to see you, that's it, thanks. But yeah, it's a filtering process. It's good.
I think nothing replaces physical connection, right? In person, touching somebody and hugging. I think nothing replaces that. And but there's a high percentage of my team that I never met physically. They're spread all over the world, and we have a colleague in Buenos Aires. And I never met them in person. And Lorena, for example, Lorena and Danny just met, right? So Lorena goes to Danny, hi, right? With this energy of, hi, finally, right? And Danny goes like, I know you, hi, a little bit. His body language, like, yeah, like, wow, you're really enthusiastic. But we know each other, He's like, and he shakes his hand because they had never met in person. But he didn't remember that because he has seen her so many times on the screen at the Mesa meetings but she's here and she's thinking, oh, Danny, Yelmer, Sebastian. No, she has all these squares and she's thinking, oh, I'm gonna meet him for the first time. I'm gonna meet me, I'm gonna meet her. So she hadn't met Gordon, for example, in person. And yesterday, it was the same thing. She went to Gordon, hi! And Gordon went like Lorena, hi, you forgot me? And then it said, Lorena was quiet, and she didn't say anything. So I said, you haven't met in person. He goes, really? It was like, so this is what this new media is creating for us? Or, I don't know if I remember once, I came across Gary Barlow. Gary Barlow, and it was at the supermarket. So I was at Tesco's, and I see this guy, and I look at him. He looks at me, and I go, hi. I couldn't remember who he was, but I really thought I knew him. Hi, and I said, you look so familiar. What do I know you from? And he goes, yeah. And then Brits say, maybe from telly, right? He goes, maybe from telly? And I go, oh, you're in TV, wow, okay. And then the coin dropped, and I go, oh, you're Gary Barlow. And he sort of smile, and I let him walk away, and all of this. But this, so this is the kind of stuff that happens, right? So this connection, we're talking about creating meaningful connections and creating meaningful connections also online. How we deal with that? So I think that this new media, this new way of connecting, what you just went through there, what you just went through. So you because now we have a face, right? It used to be just a voice. And then when you met the person, it was a different experience, but it was so visual. There's so much going on here. I'm going to do more research on that. What's going on here when we look at somebody's eyes and, this kind of thing. And have you been... I'm really fascinated when I'm looking at... because we're in this environment, every time I'm looking at TV, at the news, and these people really looking into my eyes and saying, how does she do it? How does he look into the screen, look at me, but it's looking at teleprompter? So this person is reading, but I cannot see the eyes moving, right? And everything that he or she is saying, she's reading, and she's smiling, and she's talking to me only, right? So it's like, it's all of that going on, and I'm fascinated because I feel it's almost like acting or something, and how well trained they are. Because as I'm experiencing it, when I'm talking to you in a video call, I am trying to look at the screen. So if I'm having, for example, if I'm interviewing a candidate, or I'm talking to even more if I'm talking to a female potential customer, I look at the little dot. I look at the camera. I look at the camera constantly when she's speaking to me, and I'm there, putting as much attention, and all of my emotions go into this little thing that says nothing back, and that's why I tend to put my image and the other one next. So at least, when you do that, it's just a very small movement there.
Love it. Also know people that actually put a picture around the camera, so they have some face to actually look at. Yeah, it is a good hack. Just
I got a
because
new product. Yeah, a new product. It's a mirror.
Pretty much.
A mirror with a hole.
Just being able to look at a face makes you already more likely to imagine that you're actually talking to a person rather than a dot. So that's another tip I would like to add. Anyone else who would like to share their tips in terms of creating meaningful connections? I know we are a little bit longer than we anticipated, but I really love the conversation. If you already want to go off because you have another meeting, feel free to do so, but make sure to ask Adam or me to scan your badge, because we will share all the insights that we have from these different sessions with you, as long as we have your information. So make sure to do that before you leave. With that, you're obviously welcome to stay. I would love to extend the conversation and hear from you. Like, what are your best tips for creating meaningful connections from behind the screen? Anyone who would like to pitch in there? I'm just gonna give the microphone again to the closest. Yeah, here we go.
Thank you. So I work with John Martinez, Pritesh Mordia from Shocklogic. I lead the development team and the support team. And I think in my team, when I'm talking to customers, or when my team is talking to customers, the one meaningful connection that they find is relating to the problem, understanding what the challenge is. And sometimes that's quite difficult, because sometimes we say it's got two legs, a tail, and a body, and that could be a horse, a dog, or a cat, right? So understanding that truly is what has you relate to our customers sometimes. And then being able to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't get it. And sometimes I find myself on a call, taking an A4 piece of paper, folding it in half, and showing them that's what the badge is going to look like. And here is going to be the logo, and here is going to be... Sometimes we even pull out the ruler to measure how long that logo is going to be, in order for us to be able to truly visualize what you might not be able to do online now through this tiny camera. So allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to say, I really don't know how we're going to make this happen, but going over and beyond using the technology that we have to express that. Because it's different now. Before we used to be able to sit next to each other, draw it out on a piece of paper. Now I'm using paint to draw terrible drawings on this screen while I share my screen to express the vision that we want to achieve together. And that's, for me, that's scary. I don't have great handwriting, and I don't have great drawing either, right? So allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to do that is a really good, meaningful connection there.
Thank you so much. Anyone else who would like to add into the conversation and share their tips?
Yeah. Thanks, John. Okay, firstly, I completely agree with what was just said about the sort of shared problem solving. And I think that it's one of the things I find with having conversations online, and particularly if you're doing a sales conversation, is regarding it not as talking to someone, but talking with someone. English has two ways of expressing that, and talking with someone is so much better. It gives them space to explain, and for you to say, yeah, as you say, I'm not sure I get it. Can we try looking at that again in a different way? So I think that's really interesting. The other thing, I'm actually not sure how I feel about this, but one of the things that I found useful in building relationships with people during the pandemic, who I've never met, who are now customers of ours, was actually the working from home and the non-corporate backgrounds. When you're actually seeing into someone's life when you're talking to them, and you can see their bookshelf, or you can see, I think one of Bob's colleagues that I spoke to specifically had Star Wars background behind him. So you actually have a little bit of their personality that they've chosen to put on screen, and it gives you some connection that you can actually start talking about that a little bit, as well as whatever business problem you're solving, so you get to know them a little bit more. The reason why I say I'm not sure about it is in education, there's been a lot of comments by students whose lecturers said to them, you must have your camera turned on, I need to be able to see you, I need to be able to see your eyes. And the students have said, yeah, but I feel uncomfortable. And in that case, it's often because of the backgrounds, because they're working in a very cramped environment and they don't want people seeing into their personal life. So I think we have a plus and minus there. People must be able to do something to make them feel comfortable. Like John said, in the end, the conversation's going to go best if you feel comfortable in yourself and in your environment.
As a tip, what I did is that I took a picture of my bookshelves at home, and I took a picture of my bookshelves, and then I put it as a background. So there are my books, my photos, my things, but where the bookshelves is, the light is totally wrong. You know, the lights are coming from the side. So how to create that? And the books that I choose to be behind me are very purposeful. They're not there by coincidence. The photos with me and my son, me, Johnny, and Jack, and my two sons, and the photos with my partner, they're all very thought and very purposeful, because this portrays also who I am, right? So, right? People get an image, and I mean, you're a very well-dressed man. That's not by coincidence, right? So I think, pay attention to that. Now, sometimes the backgrounds that we use, I think, at least internally with us, we like the blur, because the blur allows for, there's enough there to, and you can control the percentage of blur. There's a piece of software called XSplit. Write it down, and there's a free version, it's a cheap version, it's a very cheap also. An XSplit, what it does, it creates, and there are many of these, okay? It creates a digital camera. So you have a third camera. And that camera, you can do things to it. So you don't depend on zoom. The camera, so what this digital camera does, it takes the image from the physical camera and adds stuff to it. Like you would do with some of this software to manipulate the screen. So that's how we add the lower third. That's how we add a blur. So the blur doesn't come from zoom. The blur comes from this digital camera. Also, you have digital microphones. So you can actually have a microphone that you exclude all the background. So the microphone takes the sound from the physical microphone, passes it, processes it, and then puts the sound out without the background noise. So only when somebody is moving and you're on your mobile, because mobiles still don't have enough of this block the background noise thing, and some headsets are very intrusive. Some headsets take all the sound in the outside. Because remember, when the sound comes, right, so the sound is going to hit the microphone, it hits it all at once. There's no depth, right? So one of my recommendations is always use a headset, okay? Don't talk to the microphone of your computer, because the microphone of your computer is designed, it's a very cheap, not very good microphone, and the microphone of your computer is designed to take the sound of everything. So your voice and the bark of the dog come on the same level. It's not staggered, okay? So, and a headset would allow me that if there are noises in my environment that are muted, I can hear you clearly. So I don't have to, sorry, can you repeat that again? Or sorry, because already internet's going to affect. The speed of your machine is going to affect. Now, everything, if you're in the dark room and you have the camera on, the computer is working really hard to enhance your image. And therefore, it's going to lower the bandwidth, and there might be breakages in the communication. It's not only, so what it makes a bad connection is not always the bandwidth. It's also the quality of the image, because the machine is working overtime in order to try to enhance what it does, what it's doing for you.
So, some really interesting points, and going back to Tamsin about the backdrop. Sometimes when it's more intentional to create a backdrop that you think is right, it loses its authenticity. So that casual backdrop is, I'm here, I'm vulnerable. This is me, I'm busy, I'm trying to get things done, I'm taking this call because I can, not because I'm orchestrating it, and it then doesn't feel contrived. When I see this book analogy you put forward, we've been on calls with Gordon, where's Gordon? But he's got his own title in the background. And to me, it feels a little awkward. It's a sale. It's, come on, notice my book. And I find that an awkward thing to watch, to be looking at someone and seeing distraction. But going then from distraction about books and backgrounds to what distractions are online, because if you're in your home environment, it's much easier to be distracted by your cat walking past, the need to go to the fridge for the 50th time today, or whatever it is that you feel comfortable doing on a regular basis. So to make a more meaningful relationship from an in-home position as opposed to an in-work position, I find it hard. I admit that. But I then have to put the safety net in place. The safety net should be, and I do have back-to-back meetings quite often, but should be 15 minutes of coming away from that meeting, recording the right type of next action, so that my intentionality to make it a meaningful relationship is based around my commitment after the call's finished to record the dates, the meeting, the notes, who I'm referring to. I don't think that's a process we've really learned that well, because a lot of people will tell you, oh, I missed out, I didn't put it in the diary, I didn't do something. So that's a human trait. That's something that we have to start engineering, and we all have to start being more accountable to what we mean by intentionality and what we mean by a meaningful relationship. Trying to be meaningful in a call and trying to be in with somebody at the call does not mean that you've consolidated what you've done in that call, because you need to do something afterwards to really then move it forward and tether the next connection, the next time you meet, the next time you see or speak to someone. So that needs to be a real strategy, and I don't think many people think of it as a post-call thing, and it really, really should be. If we're going to get good at intentionality with online, then it has to be a strategy.
I fully believe the same way of over-prepare and then go with the flow, I think that we need to think about these things. We need to think about what's behind us, how we come across. I don't know if you realize it, but I'm always wearing my orange shirt. I never wear a T-shirt. In my team, if you have a meeting with a customer, or a meeting with an external, you're not allowed to do it on your T-shirt, on your hoodie, on your, how easy it is. You have a shirt behind the door. You're working from home. Take the shirt, put it on, and then present yourself, because it's this bit that matters, right? And then the image that comes across is absolutely different. Yes, and then my customers still are not. I mean, the one paying the bills are not the millennials yet. Okay, the one paying the bills until now are 50 plus. So yeah, so I'm gonna give them that. I'm gonna give them what it is acceptable to their eyes, with what is going to go. Yes, that's a proper person, on whatever prejudice we might have, but that is, and if it is an internal meeting, then it's okay. And we have meetings where it's a camera zone meeting. So certain meetings are camera zone meeting, certain meetings are not. And if it's a camera zone meeting, I expect you to own the situation and do something about it. If you're going to be in a camera zone meeting, then don't tell me, no, I cannot put the camera on because there's something in my background. Then do something about it, and that's it. No if, no buts. Do something about it, because the tech is there, everything is there, and then what we call showing up. And showing up for us is we tend to say that when we are developing, we do our best. As adults, we do what is necessary, right? You do what needs to be done. And one of our values is be unstoppable. So just get it done. Yes, but then talk to the tech team so they install the software so you can do, the whole thing. But of course, this is a work environment, which I think it would be different to a learning environment. And so maybe there, and I understand there is a lot for us to learn still on the human side. We have a colleague that doesn't turn her camera on ever. And she wrote and she said, I don't feel comfortable. And so she never turns her camera on. And it was difficult for me for a while. And then I had a chat with our coach, counselor. He sees everybody. And he said, you want her to be active? Yeah, why not? What's the problem? Yeah, but if everybody, why does she have to have special conditions to everybody else? Well, because she has a special situation, If you had somebody in a wheelchair or whatever, you would cater for this thing. So she has a special situation. Okay.
Yeah, you won't expect them to start walking in a wheelchair, for instance. And in that regards, I think to just quickly summarize it, because I understand that people also have meetings and we are running a little bit late. It comes down to really making sure that you're well prepared, you do things on purpose. You have your standard operating procedures, but then regarding your virtual elements that you can manage, but also yourself as a person, and making sure that you're in the right mindset, that you have the right energy, because even though you're looking at a screen, that other person can still hear in your voice where you are at in terms of where your mind is at, and if you're really there to create a connection, if you're doing your efforts to make sure that that connection becomes meaningful. If there are any last words, John, feel free to add them. But I will already thank everyone here for joining the session. Just a quick note that the next session is going to be at 3. That will be about the future of meaningful connections. So we've now spoken about in-person, or first the definition of meaningful connections. Next one was in person. Now we spoke about behind the screen. And if we combine all of that, what should the future of meaningful connections look like? What can the next step be? What are processes that we can put in place? It's going to be a fun brainstorm, and actually Tamsin will be joining us there as well. So make sure you tune in. And with that, thank you all very much for being here. John, last word?
Thank you very much. Cheers. That's it. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a great day, everyone.